Britain has another world champion, Katie Taylor.
Katie Taylor! Katie Taylor, championne, championne bound champion Olympics of Joe.
Jackson's power is simply devastating lead, and there's a perfect right-hand counter.
And the new WBA featherweight champion of the world, the great Irish champion, Carl the Jackal Frampton.
Hello and welcome to the Irish Boxing Insiders podcast. I'm your host as ever, Joe O'Neill, and this is a special episode. It's a free episode. It's a guerrilla episode. We're coming to you right after the Irish in action today at the Olympics. Our fortunes have turned to a degree. It's all very exciting. How are you, Johnny? Tired?
Very, Joe. Very. It's actually kind of ironic that the one fight I nearly slept in for was the O'Rourke fight.
Yes, since we last spoke to you on Monday on the Patreon, it has been good for Ireland, we'd say. Aidan Walsh got a big win. Kurt Walker got an enormous win, which we'll discuss in a second. And unfortunately there, in the last few minutes, Aoife O'Rourke has bowed out. But we're gonna have a nice Irish boxing good news sandwich here. We're going to start with Walker, then go on to O'Rourke, and then finish up with young Aidan Walsh. Johnny, we spoke on Monday about how at every major championship, there's always a Irish fighter who sort of fights out of his skin and causes a big scalp. And God, that was Kurt Walker defeating the number one seed, gold medal favourite, world champion, the Uzbek Mirzakhalilov.
Yeah, like what a performance. He was absolutely brilliant. And you had said about John Joe Nevin and Darren Sutherland beating world medalists in their Olympic campaign, and Kurt has just done the same. Unfortunately for Kurt, it doesn't get him a medal, and I presume we'll talk about what's next for him in a bit. But I just thought he was brilliant from the off, and you know, everyone had watched the clip where Eric Donovan had said like Kurt had the style to cause him trouble, and that proved the case. But again, and I think we've been saying a lot about a lot of Irish fighters at the minute, it was like when he had to stand and show some guts, he did. And in fairness, in the second round, and I think one shot in the third round, he showed a really solid chin too. So, like, as we said, there was guts and guile there, you know, skill and will. I had a bit of everything. And I honestly thought he was a deserved winner. Like, when I woke up and I saw people crying robbery, now I don't know how the level of boxing sort of them people are exposed, or is that just like or was it just fans? But it was seemed to be there on Twitter, and I don't know what you think about that yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to get too bogged down in it. Like, I would agree that the second round was it all came down to the second round, which Kurt Walker won on a 3-2 split. And yeah, I've noticed sort of as a bit of a trend, and you'll see it as a bit of a theme coming through this little mini pod here, that the judges in this tournament are maybe siding towards the more classic sort of amateur boxing scoring, whereas like when the 10-9 system came in was it 2013, you saw aggression like praised almost too much. And I haven't been watching huge amounts at this tournament outside of Ireland and the big names, but like some of the more aggressive fighters are getting beaten. We'll get onto that. Like Aidan Walsh was expecting to be fighting if you were looking at the draw, you'd say Aidan Walsh was planning to be fighting an absolute bull from Jordan, but he's instead going to be fighting an awkward guy. And yeah, I think that may have been in the, I don't know if it was a plan going in, or if it's just we're sort of reverting to the mean a bit after a few years of scoring aggression. Because like, yeah, Kurt was smart in there. Like, the Uzbek was coming forward, but Walker was catching him with clean. Okay, maybe say if that's a 10-round fight, it wouldn't be the tactics you're taking, but like tactically for a 3-round fight, as he said in the interview right afterwards, win the first round. He started really fast, won the first round, and then in the second, he was just smart enough to like have showy sounds like an insult, but it's not. Like, he did land a couple of clean shots, and then even like the closing seconds, he finished really strong. Finished and began the rounds quickly, which is just like good tactical boxing.
I think he had a minute and a half nearly of the first round, Joe, where he was on the back foot, just landing clean and sharp, and I was thinking, like, what's all the fuss about here about the Uzbek? But then he got caught with a shot that seemed to like slow him down and take his feet away, and then he did ship some big shots. But as you say, like that's what really impressed me. He had the recovery and the wherewithal to finish the round strong. Then, so like I wouldn't argue at all with giving him that round.
No, and yeah, we don't want to get bogged down. And even if like I can see people saying, and I know some people who be like, oh, maybe I would have given Uzbek the second round. Like that doesn't make it a robbery. I don't think.
No,
Like if you have like someone has to win, and enough people thought that Kurt Walker won. Lots of people may have thought that Uzbek won, but it wasn't a stone cold. Oh, evidence of corruption. Oh, nothing happened there. Like the third round, I think as well. The fact that he was up to an almost unassailable lead in terms of if you're just going 10-9, 10-9, 10-9. So the third round, maybe you could say took the foot off the pedal or was boxing smart or knew that he didn't need to expose himself to too much risk and just survive through the round without chipping a 10-8, which he didn't. Like maybe that does color your looking at a fight afterwards if you've just seen, because I suppose like the third round probably was the clearest of the 3 rounds to either fighter, if that makes sense. But yeah, like I don't think this is a major deal.
no, I think we've seen loads of tour rounds like that in the tournament, and it even happened in the Walsh fight or in Aoife O'Rourke's fight. Like if you've got a lead where you just have to avoid a 10-8, be it from getting a standing 8 count or getting dominated or a point loss, like you just keep your distance, isn't it? Like you just play cat and mouse. But overall, like it was a brilliant performance. It was kind of what we were saying going into the tournament. We needed something just really joyous and these kind of great memories, and it's just one of them wins that we'll remember for a long time. Really delighted for Kurt considering what he's gone through of late, and even just like again we were probably saying about Michaela Walsh, he's been consistent over the last number of years, and he should have a higher profile. And it's great to see a wider audience see what sort of talent he is, and you know what sort of bloke he is too.
Annoys is probably the wrong word, but I'm so annoyed that it wasn't a fight for a medal. And we're going to get on to his quarterfinal here. This is Saturday night into Sunday morning, 3:30 a.m. Kurt Walker is fighting American Duke Reagan. Billy Walsh's, like there's storylines here wherever. Duke was a pro for the last year or so, got back in through the world rankings route. Like he wasn't planning on the Olympics. His Olympic dream ended last year to his mind, and then the qualifiers are cancelled. He ends up at the Olympics. So maybe not perfect preparations, but then Jesus just talked to Kurt Walker about perfect preparations. Like we're into tournament boxing here. You're going to have the Billy Walsh angle. This is going to be a huge fight. And Kurt's still an underdog here. I know people, when you're from Ireland and say we've after beaten the number 1 seed, and you're like, oh, well, now I'm the man to beat. But practice what you preach. When if you're looking at the draw and you see from an Irish fighter's perspective and you see the number 1 has been knocked out by an unseeded fighter, you don't then automatically go, oh, this unseeded fighter is now the number 1 to watch out for.
No, you celebrate it, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, I don't think, and I'm just afraid that people are going to think it's a foregone conclusion. I know Kurt won't, I know the Irish team won't, and there's plenty of footage to go on Duke Reagan, and like he has had a good Olympics so far. He's beaten the solid French guy Kistahuri and then beat the Kazakh last time out. Like he's a world silver medalist, which is a higher medal than Kurt has ever won. Like this isn't just oh, you've gone beaten the number 1 now, so let's waltz to gold.
No, I totally agree with that as well. Now I haven't seen much of Reagan, and I presume you'll have be doing your homework and know a bit about him over the next while. But like, just when you say he's a world silver medalist, like, has there anyone ever had a harder route to try and win a medal? Like, it's insane what if he wins that medal, like he'll have earned it like no other fighter I can ever remember.
Well, this is actually the conversation I've been having with a couple of people. The draw is such a random thing, and it isn't fair sometimes. I've just reminded them taking sort of confidence from John Joe Nevin, who had to go through a Kazakh, Dennis Seelan, who became a pro European champion, Oscar Valdez, just to get a medal, and then he had Cuban in the semi-final. So I'm okay with shades of Nevin comparisons here. But that's 3:30 now on Sunday morning. It's a different type of fight again. Like it's going to be a more tactical battle here. He's a bit similar to Walker in a way. So like this is going to like to go to the Billy Walsh angle, Billy Walsh had left in, what was it, 2015? So I think he had one tournament with Kurt Walker at the European Games, but obviously he would have been around the high performance unit. So I'm not reading too much into it there. Also, there's hours and hours of video occurred out there, so I don't think there's any like state secrets there. But I am really looking forward to this fight. As I was saying, probably underdog, maybe close to like it is a 50-50. Like this medal is not in the bag by any means.
Does it get easier after that then, Joe? Like, is that, if he accounts for this American, is that everyone done and dusted? Like, could this be nearly a gold medal fight?
I wouldn't say that. No, he has probably going to have a Colombian in the semis if he gets to there, and then there's the very strong Russian on the other side of the draw, who I actually was tipping for gold before this tournament, but one fight at a time.
Okay, I'm just getting a bit ahead of myself here. You're right.
Aoife O'Rourke, we'll just mention briefly, she lost a competitive unanimous decision to Chinese veteran Li Chen. This sort of, as I was saying, the super aggression isn't maybe being rewarded as much as it was in the mid 2010s. Aoife pushed hard, maybe was a bit unlucky in the second round not to get at least on a share on some of the cards. Although I did see Ken Moore describe on Twitter how like Li Chen is just so smart. Like we were saying that it was maybe going to not a pass to the guard, but like there might have been an intersection with one fighter on the way up and one fighter on the way down, but she still had enough sort of nous. She knew like she skirted close to the line in terms of holding, but not enough to get a point deduction. She was able to just like O'Rourke's pressure was brilliant, but it was just being sort of punctuated with these like clean shots that caught the judge's eyes, and maybe could have seen O'Rourke maybe get it, but like I think this is more just sort of a learning experience. And then you're looking, she's just turned 24. She really strikes me as a career amateur rather than someone who'll turn pro. 27 in Paris, 31 in LA. So many European and worlds in between then. Like you can really, considering how quickly and well she has been built over the last 3 years, you can really see her turning into a major medal threat at pretty much every tournament going forward for the next few years.
Yeah, like people forget she's a European gold medalist as well, isn't it? Like, and she showed like massive improvement in recent years, and like just maturity and tactically. Like even in that fight, like it's her usual style is like on the toes, isn't it? Using her height in out, and like this one, she's flat foot aggressive. Like she's just really went for it, and she threw it all at the Chinese fighter for. It's particularly in the second round, like that was just like, or she threw what she could and hope for the best. Lee reminded me a little bit of Aidan Walsh, like, and you can see how frustrating it is for other people, other countries when they're watching their fighters fight Aidan Walsh. Like she was that clever, smart, good on her feet, but she didn't look at like a million miles above O'Rourke, and that's like a compliment in itself. It shows she's there or thereabouts. And as you say, she could have got the nod. Like you wouldn't have argued, especially in the second round. And if Lee had to come forward in the third round, then it would have been much of the same. And I think she definitely would have got deducted a point for holding then, because she couldn't have survived that kind of pressure without holding. It looked like she was getting tired in the second, and it was just, again, as we said, like going into the last with a lead, she just was clever enough to know what she had to do, like avoid any sort of in quarters fighting, and then I won't be forced to hold, and I won't get deducted a point, and I'll get through. And actually, it's mad because that was our best round and where she was at her best.
Aoife O'Rourke, yeah, definitely one to look for in the future. Unless, although this is probably going out to a wider audience, I might be getting some messages of young potential middleweights coming up. But we'll move on. We'll move on to Aidan Walsh, the apple of my eye. I love his style because I'm Irish. I can imagine it's infuriating. It's wouldn't translate really to, say, the pros too well. You'd need to make serious changes, but just as a frustration and point scoring machine, like he's so smart and tactically aware, and even though he's a lot younger than Li Chen, he knows how to skirt close to the line. He knows like how to catch judges' eyes, and he did that against Albert Mengue, who was being tipped as like this solid African fighter coming through, had a lot of power. Against my better judgment, I watched some of them right before the Aidan Walsh fight, and I was watching him knock out people, and I'm going, oh god. But Aidan Walsh made him look extremely wild and ragged and frustrated, got the 2 points off. It was a clinic, really, in terms of a 3x3 Olympic boxing bout. And now he's up for a medal now. Friday morning, Kellie Harrington's in at 3 a.m. Friday morning, and then at 10 to 5, Aidan Walsh is fighting Mervyn Clare of Mauritius. Like, it's some story, Johnny, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and you know, as we were saying on the last part, not quite a bolter, but like he did come through a difficult field and probably wasn't in pole position in and around 2019, like or early 2019, to be selected, like to go to the qualifiers. And it's mad. Like I was only just thinking there, like when you watch him, like you don't know whether he's southpaw or orthodox because he's basically square on all the time. Like he has the most unique style, and he dances around and you nearly have to compliment his club, like because I can imagine if a kid came in like that, like you'd say, no, you have to stand like this, and you throw your jab like this, and left foot before your right foot, or what have you, and like they didn't change him, and they just have this kind of unique talent, I suppose, and he's reaping the rewards from people just like letting him be.
Yeah, and it worked against Mengre. Against Mervyn Clare, it's a different sort of challenge. I mentioned previously how Mervyn Clare defeated the Jordanian Zayad 3-2 on a split. I saw, again, people haven't actually watched that fight specifically, but I have seen people disagree with the verdict. I'm wondering, is it maybe a bit of boxer versus fighter and given too much credence to the fighter there? But he's also beaten a Canadian fighter, although the Canadian wasn't huge on the international scene. This guy, 28, was a middleweight at Rio. He fought in Rio, got knocked out in the first round, but like big guy. I think he's 5'10" or 11. Aidan Walsh is a big guy as well, and he's grown into the weight well, but he's fighting not a carbon copy of himself because he can't really copy what Aidan Walsh has, but he's fighting a big awkward fecker. He's African Games gold, African Championship silver, twice at the Commonwealth Games, at like really experienced guy. And it's going to be a horrible, messy fight. It's not going to be an inverted commas advertisement for amateur boxing, but just 9 minutes and classic Aidan Walsh, get the lead, just be smart, get the win, because he will be a favourite for this fight, even though he is fighting like an African champion. Like, and Mauritius is one of the better countries in Africa. But again, as we've been saying this whole way through, if you had given this draw, like, we're not saying it's an easy draw, and maybe because the draw has been analysed more this time, because we're saying that it hasn't been good to Irish boxers, just because it has been good to Aidan Walsh. Like, we're not asterisking anything. Like, this is a huge opportunity, but it is still going to be a tough fight. And like, you could see easily if Mervyn Clare is tactically better on the night or the morning or whatever you want to call it, if he's tactically better, if he gets a lead, if he forces maybe Aidan Walsh, if he ties Aidan Walsh up, if a referee docks Aidan for holding or something like that, like, this isn't a foregone conclusion, even though it is a relatively minor country in the international boxing scene.
No, yeah, I agree with you there. Like the narrative of Aidan Walsh has got a good draw kind of changed into Aidan Walsh should walk to a medal. Like and that's not the case. Like he's against someone who knows how to win, who's won tournaments, is long, is awkward, and I'd say can be physically imposing too. Like he's a unit, and as you say, he's very tall. But the way it appears in Aidan Walsh fights is if he wins the first round, then go put the kettle on. Like it's home and dry stuff, isn't it? And it probably all comes down to like a really bright start.
Yeah, go put the kettle on.
Isn't it? Like it's
to a degree, yeah. It's like he is something else. It's a style that some people don't like, but God, if it gives you the results, like, I could not care less.
here.
Yeah, we're not going to hold you for long today or whenever you're listening for this. We are just putting this out as a bit of a taster for the Irish Boxing Insiders Patreon. We do have a weekly podcast and newsletter every Monday where we go into depth on all the fights coming up the coming weekend and go through all the fights that happened the weekend before and any news that came up over the previous 7 days too. Obviously, with the Olympics and stuff changes so quick, we're going to try to do a couple of these guerrilla podcasts, and we're going to put them out to everyone, hopefully as a incentive maybe to sign up for the main podcast, because it's good crack and just your sport is really appreciated. And yeah, thank you very much for listening to this taster, and thank you, Jonny.
And thank you, Joe, and thank you for all the work over the year, not over the Olympics. And again, thanks to all the patrons, because it does mean a lot to us. And hopefully we get a few more. And as Joe said, like, the podcast is great, but there's a good WhatsApp group too. That's a bit of crack.
Yeah, some insider information there, really.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully chat to you, Jonny, sometime over this weekend with some medals to toast, okay?
Will do. Take care, Joe.
There was no one beating me tonight. No. I told you, everything was going to be hunky-dory. No problem.